Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about many things. The electricity and power shortages in North Israel, unprecedented attacks coming from Hezbollah on Israel, the strike in Lebanon, killing over 14 people and wounding over 66 people, the separation of the West Bank financially from Israel to collapse the West Bank completely and continue the project of ethnic cleansing and genocide to the West Bank by different means from Israel. The Pentagon saying we won't support a ground invasion to Lebanon, and a leader in a significant IRAQI resistance movement telling the Secretary General of Hezbollah, if you lose 1,000 troops, we will send you 100,000 troops. I'm going to start off with the Lebanon attacks. Israel carried out multiple strikes. Israel confirmed they carried out 5 strikes on the southern suburb of Lebanon, also known as Al-Dahiya Al-Janubiyya, targeting a senior figure in Hezbollah. We still haven't had a confirmation that this figure has been assassinated. However, we do know that civilians were killed, including children. 14 so far. Israel collapsed at least 2 buildings, according to reports coming from Lebanon. And there's a lot of destruction. Many people are still under the rubble in what was labeled the most intense attack in Lebanon in a very long time. This is coming after the attacks on the pagers and the walkie-talkies. Israel is clearly escalating in Lebanon. Israel wants to drag Hezbollah now to an all-out war. They want Hezbollah to be dragged to an all-out war. They want more countries to participate because they have a belief that the United States will intervene eventually. Hezbollah so far, at least from what we understood from the speech of the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, yesterday, are not being dragged by Israel with the time that it wants to go on an all-out war. However, he did say in his speech that this could be a declaration of an all-out war on Lebanon. And today we saw intense attacks coming from Lebanon that are considered to be the continuation of the supporting front attacks and nothing more. We haven't seen a response to the big attacks that were carried out, the mass terror attacks in Lebanon, all across Lebanon, with the pager and walkie-talkie attacks, with thousands of people wounded and dozens martyred. But Hezbollah are sending a message with these attacks. Number one, the act of Hezbollah being a supporting front to Gaza will not stop by Israel's escalation. That's the first message. And the second message, we are increasing the level of our attacks during our day-to-day supporting front activities from Lebanon because of the attacks that you're conducting in Lebanon, regardless of the response to the big attacks that are coming on Lebanon. So Hezbollah, they have a path, they are continuing that path and are increasing it. However, we did see certain things coming in Israel that were unprecedented. We have massive power shortages, power outages in Safad, direct attacks on many settlements in the north, in the Galilee, and they're not stopping, they're increasing their attacks. Now, when it comes to the response of Hezbollah, Hezbollah do not want to allow Israel, this is from what we're understanding from what they're doing now, they do not want to be dragged to an all-out war at the time that Israel wants them to be dragged into an all-out war, because when Israel drags them to an all-out war at the time of their choosing, Israel has the upper hand. Israel has the preparation. They are telling them, look, we're doing this day after day to ignite an all-out war. Come and do the all-out war because we know what we're going to do after your attacks or after any potential escalation. Hezbollah have been hit with the recent attacks that have been carried out on Lebanon, and the Secretary General of Hezbollah admitted it. They have been hit, and the Lebanese people have been hit very badly. We also heard that response is coming to these attacks without any further elaboration. However, what we're clearly seeing is Hezbollah not being immediately dragged at the time that Israel chooses, and they will do everything based on what they see fit with their capabilities, with their capacity. Don't forget, ever since the beginning of the genocide, we had Hezbollah alongside other resistance fronts declaring that they will be carrying out activities to apply more pressure on the genocidal satanic death cult of Israel to stop its genocide and infanticide and crimes against humanity in Gaza. They did not wage an all-out war. They did not unleash all of their firepower. All they want is to reach a ceasefire in Gaza. That is why they are doing these actions. However, Israel, the spoilt beat-child of the United States, is used to having this impunity and does not want to accept or create a new reality where you have a level of intimidation coming out from other movements in the region and make that something normal, create a new equation. Israel does not want that. And with the recent attacks in Lebanon, they are trying to change this reality. Israel is ramping up these attacks in Lebanon now to, according to them, try and get Hezbollah to stop their actions. As a matter of fact, Hezbollah confirmed that after the attack that they had with their pages in Lebanon, countries approached them saying that the message is stop the supporting front and we will stop the escalation. But they said the opposite, that we will be continuing. Hezbollah will be continuing the supporting front, and the response to the escalation of Israel will come accordingly. They're not dragged. We have seen an increase in the attacks from Lebanon on Israel, but we haven't seen a response big enough to come close to what Israel has done in Lebanon. What Israel has done in Lebanon is a massive escalation, a mass-scale terror that poses a danger on the whole of humanity, especially with the fact that Israel turned technology into a mass terror tool conducted against civilians and used against civilians in hospitals, in main public roads, in markets, in cars, in houses. That's the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about is Israel and the West Bank. We've had over 500 people being killed in the West Bank, many of them innocent civilians. Israel is escalating the situation in the West Bank, and we have more and more people talking about the Greater Israel and expanding the genocide and ethnic cleansing campaign to the West Bank. The Israeli finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, carried out multiple steps since the genocide began against the West Bank to apply more pressure on them. One of them was removing the work permits from all of the Palestinian workers who used to work inside of Israel. The Israeli Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, opposed that move, saying that it will increase tensions, and if these people see that there is no chance of livelihood in Israel, it would leave them with no other option but to go and fight Israel or support the fight against Israel. So it's counterproductive if we're looking to decrease the violence against Israel. And now he is refusing to renew the authorization of Israeli banks to deal with banks from the West Bank. And the finances in the West Bank, the economy of the West Bank, relies heavily on Israel. Don't forget, Israel is present all across the West Bank, and the aid that comes from international sources in many cases comes from Israel, if not in all cases. If the West Bank authorities due to receive certain taxes, they get them from Israel. Israel uses this on a regular basis as leverage against the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian people in the West Bank, although you're talking about an authority that is only using diplomatic routes with Israel and declared many times that they do not participate in any armed conflict with Israel. They are taking these actions against them. And now, with them cutting off the authorization of Israeli banks to deal with the West Bank Authority, you're talking about an economic disaster in the West Bank that will turn the economy into a cash economy without any banks, because they wouldn't have money, and it would be counterproductive if Israel is indeed looking to decrease again the violence against it. But again, we're not having this from Israel. Israel is doing everything to increase the levels of actions coming against them. Now with this move in the West Bank, you're talking about a time-ticking bomb. Israel carried out a massive operation in the West Bank in the past few weeks, but that did not stop the Palestinian resistance in the West Bank from continuing to fight Israel. With this capital punishment on the civilian population already suffering because of the Israeli apartheid and barbarism in the West Bank, you're talking about an increase in tensions in the West Bank that could lead to a massive escalation similar to what we've seen in Gaza. The third thing, the United States is looking to act like it's not involved with anything when it comes to Lebanon. Ibrahim Aqil, the man who Israel supposedly targeted, and Israel confirmed that he was killed, by the way, but we haven't had that confirmation from Hezbollah, is also one of the most wanted people when it comes to the US. And there are reports that are saying that he was one of the masterminds behind the attack on the US Marines in the early 80s in Lebanon. They had a $7 million bounty on his head as well. And Israel is trying to either put the United States in a corner when it comes to the assassination, saying that, well, you also label him as a terrorist. And also the United States is most likely hiding its direct involvement in this assassination. Nothing that Israel conducts in Beirut or in Lebanon comes without approval of the United States and without involvement of the United States. Israel said that they used F-15s in this attack, but initial reports said it was F-35s. F-35s are operated in direct communication with the United States. The United States is Israel, and Israel is the United States when it comes to all of this. So the talk from the US administration that they somehow reject an Israeli invasion to Lebanon, like the talk that they rejected an Israeli invasion into Gaza, like the talks that they rejected an Operation Rafah, like the talks that they rejected an Israeli control over the Philadelphia corridor, all of that is talk. The fact of the matter is we're seeing the United States administration giving Israel full impunity and giving them everything that they need to continue and expand their mass-scale terror and stretch it to other countries and to the whole region. And you're talking about a reckless entity committing a genocide in Gaza, mass killings, mass destruction, killing in many countries, targeted assassinations in many countries, and they're still enabling them. This is a strategy from the United States. What Israel is doing is not detached from the will and actions of the United States administration, because they want to get the Middle East over and done with so they can focus on the bigger picture from their perspective, which is Russia and China. And to do that, they need the Middle East to go down, but with Israeli superiority. They don't want to create a new reality where Israel is seen as the punching bag of the Middle East that has no intimidation and no superiority when it comes to weapons and intimidation of other nations. The past 10 months proved indeed that Israel did become the punching bag of the Middle East. People are not intimidated by them. We have seen unprecedented participation in the Battle of Al-Aqsa flood in support for the Palestinian people, for the oppressed Palestinian people going through a genocide in Gaza. And the United States does not want to deal with that reality moving forward, so they are trying to support Israel as much as possible so that the status quo could again be Israel has the upper hand. And we have a very important thing here. During every escalation, we have many people who are celebrating with champagne bottles. You're talking about the military-industrial complex is making money out of the deaths of people. To them, the more war we have, the more weapons we sell. Great, keep the war going. and great expand the war. These things are not detached from one another, and that's why the United States is fully complicit, if not leading what Israel is doing in the Middle East and in the region in terms of escalation and mass scale terror. The final thing that I wanted to talk to you about is a message coming from one of the resistance movements in Iraq. The term the Islamic resistance in Iraq is a very big term. It consists of many groups operating in Iraq and participating in resisting Israel and in fighting Israel with Gaza and with Lebanon. However, we've had a solidarity message and a confirmation from one of the resistance movements in Iraq. In particular, it came from the Secretary General of the Sayyid al-Shuhada Brigades in Iraq. His name is Abu Ala al-Wala'i, to the Secretary General of Hezbollah, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah. And he sent him his message after these attacks were carried out by Israel and Lebanon. And he told him a couple of things in his message that reiterated the support of the Iraqi resistance when it comes to Lebanon, but also pointed out that they will be supporting them in case they need them. He said in his message, one of the things that he said, "We are waiting for a signal from you to open the gates for the river of men to receive a human flood from Iraq that will crowd the borders and trenches of Lebanon. And if you lose 1,000 martyrs, we will support you with 100,000 heroes, and God is witness to what we say." And this came from one of the resistance movements in Iraq. You're talking about a massive country with many movements who are aligned with Hezbollah and support the cause of Hezbollah in Lebanon. And if we're getting that message from one movement, then what message can we get from all of the other resistance movements in Iraq, let alone the Yemeni front? We previously had reports that if Hezbollah opens a direct front with Israel and is in need of people fighting with them, that they can get over 1 million fighters from Iraq and Yemen, let alone Iran. So there is more than enough manpower to go in Lebanon and fight against Israel. As a matter of fact, in the beginning of the war, we had one of the most senior figures in the Iraqi resistance on the Israeli borders with Lebanon, recording and sending a message to Israel that we're here and we are willing to participate. However, that participation still hasn't come to effect yet when it comes to the front or the ground front in Lebanon, because there has been no strategic decision to go down that path. Many observers are saying that Hezbollah are still trying to win by points and not go into an all-out war, because they know their limits and their boundaries when it comes to an all-out war. The United States has forces in the region. These forces will most likely be deployed to support Israel regardless what the United States says. There is a big argument that this support will not be enough to save Israel completely, because you're talking about shortages internally. Israel is suffering heavily from shortages when it comes to the IDF, and they have done nothing to solve that problem. Yet they are still having this escalation with Lebanon, and they are threatening with the ground invasion. And when we talk about the ground invasion, you're talking about a country that had over 1,200 military vehicles targeted in Gaza, either targeted or completely destroyed, almost 1,000 of which are Merkavas, being hit with the 105 and RPG missiles from the Palestinian resistance. And Israel hasn't done enough to repair the damaged tanks. How are they going to go to a ground invasion in Lebanon, and how can they threat to go on a ground invasion in Lebanon if they have so much damage when it comes to their tanks, the main tool that they need to invade Lebanon. And again, in his speech yesterday, Sayyid Nasrallah said that we hope that they try and invade Lebanon. We wish that they come. Now we are having so much resources to try and find information about them inside the Israeli territories, because they use so many tools and so many tactics to hide, but we end up finding them and targeting them. If they do invade Lebanon, they are in our territory and they would be exposed to our blows. But so far, Israel hasn't invaded. They had 3 invasion attempts previously that were taken down immediately by Hezbollah, including in areas where Israel thought would be weak points for Hezbollah. So they're carrying out these attacks. This attack on the pagers and walkie-talkies and now airstrikes, most likely from F-35s, by the way, in Lebanon, although Israel said it was in F-16s, and we haven't seen a ground invasion yet. The question is, if Hezbollah is responding to Israel by having an average day-to-day increase of their attacks on Israel as a supporting front in solidarity with Gaza, and we haven't had a bigger response yet, will Israel continue down the escalation, or will they go back to the standard day-to-day operations that they had with Hezbollah before they conducted these attacks in Lebanon? That is not looking likely, because Hezbollah, number one, have increased their day-to-day responses. Secondly, will inevitably have to respond to what Israel conducted in Lebanon in terms of mass-scale terror, because if they do not respond with a significant blow, they will create a precedent. And Israel will think that we have the capacity to go because Hezbollah will not respond. There was an argument that Israel increased these attacks and carried out these operations in Lebanon because they didn't have a significant attack from Iran following the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. That didn't come yet. Israel thought that, okay, well, they accepted it, they haven't responded yet, and now we can escalate with Hezbollah because Hezbollah relies heavily on Iran and they will not necessarily attack. However, there is a difference between each front. There's a difference between Iran, there's a difference between Iraq, Yemen, and Lebanon, and each front has the freedom and ability to choose its own path when it comes to the escalation and the type of attacks that they carry out on Israel, and does not necessarily act as a whole group simultaneously attacking Israel, but rather they attack them with what they see fit and how they see fit and the level that they see fit. And these were the main things that I wanted to talk to you about in this video. I hope I shed some light as to what's happening. Stay blessed, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace.